Good morning. It's nice to see you all. I have I've been here in a while. Hi, how are you? Like looking around to see all the people who come to this class that I haven't seen for a really long time. Hi. I think it was advertised that I was going to do Shabbat, but I changed it, so I hope you don't mind. Though I do have a Shabbat lesson planned, so if there's a revolution and a coup and you really need to have Shabbat, then I can give you a Shabbat lesson. But because we're after Purim, in my head, we're at Passover. Like the day the Purim, it's the ironic thing, all that hamantash and sweet stuff in the house, and now you got to start cleaning your house out for Purim. Hi, when did you get back? And so in my head we're in Passover, and of course this congregation, unlike many congregations, but this congregation has had the spiritual practice of counting the Omer now for I think 4 years. And I think most of you know that at some point I woke up and I said, boy, I think there's a book here. And I put together a book of the Omer. We're rushing to get it out by Passover. I hope we make this Passover. So I'm asking for a discount for BJBE members. Actually, most of the passages you probably will not have seen before. Some of them you would have, some of you wouldn't have. The book is organized in, as you know, it's 7 weeks for the Omer. So it's organized in a 7-week arc with 7 spiritual principles that ask the question, if I were to go personally from a spiritual point of view from enslavement to freedom, what would that look like? Thanks, Jen. We can pass these around too separately. If you want a copy of the book, I'm trying to get advanced copies for you. So just sign that page and we'll see if we get some advanced copies. So many times people come into my office and they say, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm going to now rid myself of what is binding me, what is enslaving me, what is holding me back. I'm okay, I'm in, I'm ready. Now what do I do? So I say whatever it is that I say, and I think whatever it is I think, and we have this dialogue. But when I was asked while writing this book, well, isn't there also, in addition to the daily messages, which are in the book, isn't there also an arc in which I can go through over a 7-week process that are in the themes of the holidays? Because as you know, as I've been teaching for so many years, this period of the Jewish calendar is very, very powerful. We celebrate Purim, the celebration of existence, the celebration of survival, the celebration of our survival, the celebration of our believing in happily ever after, that we were almost extinct, and Purim becomes the metaphysical, the metaphor for the archetype for all those fears that we have, that is this ever going to go away? Will the Jewish people continue to live? And so Purim becomes a significant holiday saying, yes, there are Hamans back then and throughout all of ages, but there are also Mordechais and Esthers. And we can fill that archetype of good versus evil, and in our tradition we believe in the story, and we believe that good will triumph after all, and we believe it so much that we're on holiday Purim going to celebrate it, not by making our children dressed up as Esther, but ourselves celebrating this holiday that tells us that existence is beautiful, existence is worthwhile, existence is important, and we should celebrate the fact that we're alive. And the way that you celebrate that we're alive is by 4 mitzvot for Purim, which I challenged our Saturday morning class to follow. The 4 mitzvot for Purim is first Megillah. Tell the story. Tell the story. Tell the story that has in it that wonderful, wonderful line when Esther transformed herself from a sweet young pretty girl who kind of just rose up the ranks playing in power and managed to get into the house of the king. Okay, thank you. That managed to get into the house of the king, and that line that says to Mordecai, listen, honey, you're the one that can save the people. And if you actually step up and save the people, then redemption will come. And if you don't, redemption will come from another place. But your people, your house, your family will be gone. We're going to be gone. We're going to be killed. And then Mordecai says to her, who knows? Maybe this is the reason you were made queen. Very powerful line in which she transforms herself, and in that transformation does bring the redemption of the Jewish people. That's a story we need to tell over and over again. Who knows? Maybe for this purpose you were born. What mess are you going to clean up? What personal mess and what mess in the world are you going to clean up? Because who knows? Maybe that's why you're here right this minute. And the second mitzvah for Purim is matnat evyonim. We got to give tzedakah because the world is fundamentally broken, and we have to give tzedakah. We have to give away. We must give away time. We must give away money. We must give away kindness. We have to give it away. And the third mitzvah of Purim is mishloach manot, and among ourselves, we have to express kindnesses, people that we know, and we make plates of beautiful candies, cakes and sweets, and we go to our neighbors, and we go to our teachers, and we say, it should be sweet for you this year. So we tell the story, which is a powerful story. We give to the poor, we give to one another, and we share a meal together. We shted the fourth. We sit down and we share a meal. We sit down and share a meal. We breathe. We talk about what it means to be alive. We talk about what existence is all about. What is the purpose of my life? And Purim, therefore, according to our tradition, is the only holiday that will be celebrated in the times of the Messiah. Not Yom Kippur, not Rosh Hashanah, just Purim. And the only story that will be told is the story of Esther. And we, who are living our lives in the rhythm of the secular calendar, have relinquished this holiday to the children. And as I've been saying now for 3 weeks, leading up to Purim, the day that our child refused to dress up as Queen Esther was the day we stopped celebrating Purim. But our calendar teaches us that it is a powerful, powerful holiday. And then the calendar keeps going, as if to say to us, yes, however, mere existence isn't enough. Mere existence isn't going to do it. You have to have freedom. You have to have freedom. And here we celebrate that powerful story. Again, the telling of the story. Haggadah means to tell. Haggadah means to tell. You tell the story again. We Jews are telling the stories over and over and over again. You tell the story of a historical event, and at the same time, you're telling the story of an archetype. You were once slaves in the land of Egypt, and we were redeemed from Egypt to wander into the desert. What are you going to do with your freedom? And if you take it out of the historical realm and into the archetype, into the part that's the personal life, then you ask yourself, what's still holding me back from being marvelous, splendid, radiant, magnificent? Why isn't everybody here feeling that they're magnificent? What is enslaving us? And your thing will always be your thing. It's not that you get rid of your thing. I've told you before, Cicero, the city of Cicero, does strategic planning on how many prison cells they will need by how many at-risk third graders. garden, we were all at risk. Even those of us who came from the best houses in the world. And something dinged your spirit. And that thing that dinged your spirit is what enslaves you. It's always going to be your thing. But living a life now in which you can then sort of have consciousness and understanding, and having told your story, Haggadah, and understanding who you are, that thing doesn't have to enslave you quite like it did when you were 20 or 30. It's the greatest gift to getting older. The greatest gift to getting older is that we can rid ourselves of the power of that thing that enslaves us. And so Passover says, yeah, you're alive, you exist, but without freedom, there's no depth to your existence. And it's almost as if Passover takes us by the hand and leads us in this wilderness journey and says, come with me to the wilderness. Take away all those things you assume to be true. Come with me to the wilderness. And in this wilderness, we will strip ourselves of our slavery. Our tradition says that we had to be there for 40 years so the generation could forget what that slave mentality was. So we all here have 40 years on us. It's time for us to forget what that slave mentality is and to free ourselves. And then we get, of course, to the holiday of Shavuot. And the holiday of Shavuot says, yeah, but you know what? Freedom, without a framework, without obligation, is nothing. Because freedom doesn't mean do whatever you want to do. Freedom doesn't mean sit in the corner, watch TV all day, and eat bonbons if you feel like it. Freedom means that if you are free to buy into a system that is going to further release you from bondage. Because Shavuot is the holiday which celebrates the giving of Torah. And when we manage to get into this framework of Torah and take upon ourselves the obligation, all of the obligations, as many obligations, to love our neighbor as ourselves. Not because we're good people, not because we're ethical people, not because your mother and father told you to do it, but because you are obligated by something powerful and beyond you and divine to extend love to your neighbor. Out of a sense of obligation. And to give tzedakah generously. Not because you're a good person, but because you've elevated your very being and hitched your star to something larger than you. It can't be you-centered. I mean, you are a good person, and that's good that you're a good person. But that's not why that you do it. You don't honor your mother and father because you're a good person. You honor your mother and father because you're obligated to, because you've hitched your wagon to a star that is way, way beyond your own self-interest, even your own goodness, to something that is universally beautiful and good and powerful. And that is the commanding voice of Sinai and Torah. You don't celebrate Shabbos because it's easy. You celebrate Shabbos because in that obligation, you're released from the enslavement of the normal week. It's different. And you are able to shift. So our calendar during this period of the year, during every period of the year, but this is the period we're in, during this period of the year, going from the celebration of existence to the celebration of freedom, to the celebration of obligation and redemption, thereby being redeemed, is extremely powerful. So then comes the Omer. So what's the Omer doing in there? We've discussed before that every celebration in Judaism has 3 levels. One is a historical level, one is a level that is attached to land or agriculture, and one is a spiritual level. On the agricultural and historical level, the Omer was a measure of grain and bringing it to the harvest. You were to count the 49 days of the harvest, and you were to bring a measure, an Omer. That's a measurement. And in the book, Rabbi Stoller wrote a beautiful introduction about the historical and halachic areas of the Omer. But then the rest of the book is dedicated to the spiritual understanding of the Omer. And those of you who have followed me this practice for the last 4 years know what happens when you say, this is day 1. This is day 2. This is day 3. This is week 1, day 4. When you remember to count every day, and thereby bringing your consciousness into the living of that day, even just for a brief moment, then elevating that day and making it count. The counting of every single day for 49 days. Now what I've done here with the book is to give it a little bit more structure, because all these years I just throw things at you. There's been kind of willy-nilly, as I said before, and I'm just throwing, I take a business book off, and I take a poetry book off my shelf, and I take a Jewish book off my shelf, and as long as it's this big, which is about all you have the patience to read, although my friend Susan says you don't even have patience to read this much. All you can see on your PDA, right? If it's this big, I throw it at you. The book is organized according now to 7 spiritual principles. Again, posing that question, well, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to take this journey with you, from this point to this point, what steps do I need to go through in order to do that? Okay? So that's what class is about. So what I have given you here is I've taken out the 7 steps. I haven't given you the daily messages. Okay? So here are the 7 spiritual principles that will bring you from whatever that personal thing is that enslaves you to freedom. The first one, decide. The second one, discern. The third one, choose. The 4th week, hope. The 5th week, imagine. The 6th week, courage. The 7th week, pray. There was a lot of debate of the order of the first 3. But let's go to decide first. Now each week in the book has a small paragraph that describes what that spiritual principle means. Then it has the 7 days, either original text that I wrote or both original text that I wrote and a text that I took from other literature. So you have 2 passages on each day. And at the end of the 7 weeks, it ends in a meditation or a prayer. So what I've given you here is the beginning and the end of each of the weeks, not the middle. Okay? So Moses is in the desert and he says, who am I that I should go? Because they're at the burning bush. And God says, go get the people. They're enslaved. Get them out. And he says, who am I? I can't do this. And you say, I can't. So many years I've been struggling with the same issue. I can't do this. I can't be healthier. I can't be stronger. I can't be kinder. I can't be less impatient. I am what I am. It is what it is. And God says, well, no, you can do this, and I'll be with you. So let's read together the first part here. Or actually, does somebody like to read?
I'll read.
Okay.
God calls Moses to his destiny with an inextinguishable light. Doubt casts a shadow. We imagine him quivering, afraid, trying to avoid and protest the call. How familiar is this moment? Self-doubt plagues even the most accomplished and seemingly confident person. It prevents us from walking upon the path to self-actualization. Am I worthy? Am I able? Am I good enough?
Has anyone never had that thought? Well, I'm going to tell you something right now that you really need to believe. I'm your rabbi, I wouldn't lie to you. You are absolutely worthy. And you are absolutely capable. And you are absolutely good enough. And yet those doubts keep us back so far. They keep us and prevent us from doing so much. There is a light that is absolutely indistinguishable. It cannot go out. It is the bush that will not be consumed. And that light is the light that is inside of you. And despite what you have believed, to the contrary, all these years, this moment in the Omer, this very first week, begins with a decision. And you make the decision that today it's going to be different. Today, I'm going to start to be different. Not completely transformed, not completely rid of my humanity. Every Yom Kippur I get angry at myself that I haven't managed to rid myself of my humanity. What does that mean? I was this close to being a righteous person. And then there was that harsh word, and that impatience, and that time that I ate all the ice cream. And I was this close. And alas, it appears that after all these years I've come to an important revelation. One cannot rid themselves of their humanity. And I don't know who the Dalai Lama really is, but I'm not going to get there. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you looking at the landscape of your spirit, of your soul, of your physical being, of your life, of your daily routine, of the people you hang around with, of the way you're living your life, and to just dust out one corner. Just one corner, not the whole house. Take a little, one corner and dust it away. And you've heard me say before, and I'll say it again, the difference between somebody who is defeated by their life circumstances and somebody who is not the life circumstance. We all know the person who tells you their story and complains and whines and is so defeated and so crippled by it. And in your heart you're thinking, I don't really see that that's a problem. Do you know that person? And we all know the person who, if even a quarter of what's happening to him happened to you, you'd say, oh my God, I could never do this. I could never live with what's going on with you. And they're saying, I'm blessed. I'm okay. Really, I'm blessed. Great gift and lesson of Zena, may her memory be for a blessing. I'm blessed. So the difference between somebody who's defeated by their life circumstance and someone who's not is not the circumstance. It's the decision that they made in the darkest part of their night, looking up at the ceiling and saying, you're not going to get me. You're not going to get me. And that decision not to be defeated is the very first step, and it is incredibly powerful. I can't express enough how powerful that decision is. Not your entire life. Don't take it all on. Just one little corner. Somebody else like to read?
I'll read. So often, the problem is not the call, but rather the response. The twin enemies, fatigue and fear, are ever pervasive, making us unconscious to possibility, to beauty, to our capacity for excellence and splendor. Daily, we wander through life undirected, unnoticed, and unannounced by the grandeur of our spirit. We may be fine, but that tolerance for mediocrity places us in a fog. Voices convince us that our limitations matter more than anything. We're tired. We're so afraid of so many things. We simply do not see the power of decision.
Twin enemies, fatigue and fear. Just don't have the energy. You're tired of trying. What's the use? It doesn't seem to be working anyway. And the less expressed, but the more powerful perhaps, the fear. That what if I let go of this thing that is enslaving me and holding me back, and when I let it go and I strip it away, it's not really so beautiful underneath. It's not really so right. What if she really is right? Then I'm not going to amount to much. So the fatigue and the fear are very, very powerful here. And then we're fine. Most of us are fine. You're really fine. But our tolerance for mediocrity places us in a fog. Places us in a fog. And then the last paragraph, but when we are fearless, we fly, and when we reach beyond our limitations, we grow. Simple, you would think. When we say yes to living, we live. And upon saying yes, possibility abounds, the possibility of reclaimed power, of self-realization, of abundant living, of becoming who we were meant to be. Don't turn the page yet. Turn pages too quickly. Don't you think? Yes. Let it sink in for a second. This power of decision is the first step towards a self-actualization, towards a life of purpose and meaning, to a life well lived. It is extremely, extremely powerful. And you can go nowhere unless you decide to. And as I've been teaching this last couple of weeks, what I've been reminding is the 1970s phrase that we all knew when we were just becoming feminists back in the olden days. That is, white men in power don't change because they don't have to. And today I'll extend that out beyond that white feminist man statement. If you don't have to change, you won't. But you can make the decision to release what is enslaving you without an event that's going to make you hit bottom. You don't need an illness. You don't need a divorce. You don't need a tragedy in your family. You just need to wake up and say, I'm going to dust off one corner of my soul, and this is the one that is today. 49 days. I'm going to pay attention to this one little thing. On the back of this page is the meditation that's at the end of the 7 weeks. And this, let's read together. Today I decide to turn my eyes towards wonder so that I may see the expanse before me. Today I decide to see the possibility of my life so that I may open my mind to greatness. Today I will do one kindness so that my heart may become more loving. Today I will pause to consider so that my life may become more deliberate. Help me, dear God, to step firmly upon a path of consequence, so I may make my life a prayer of goodness and mercy, splendor and light. I ask for a life of meaning, a sense of purpose. Today I decide. So just look at that, don't turn the page. Let your eye fall upon the line that's important to you. Whatever line that was, commit to it. Week 2. It's only been a week. Discern. Wasn't too long ago that I decided discernment is a spiritual principle. We have so many voices going on inside us. There's a lot of chatter. And most of the time we don't really listen to it. It's amazing what happens when you're conscious of the chatter that is in your head. I teach this when I teach Adonai Sifatai Tivtach Lufi Yigiti Letecha, which means, God, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. And I talk about it in terms of speech. How many of the things that we say are not for the beauty and the glory of the world, but rather are negative or silly or irrelevant or just to hear ourselves speak? Told you that Elon wants to write the book of I. Tell you this? What's the book of I, the letter I? He says, do you ever notice that when you're talking to people, he says to me, do you ever notice when you're talking to people, they're not really listening, but they're always just thinking, well, I, and then telling you their part? And I said, yeah, I guess you're right. Do I do that? And he did not call me on it. He says, I don't think it would be a very long book, maybe 60 pages. I said, well, word by word, just write it. One page at a time, one sentence at a time, one word at a time. And it's his philosophy of why being quiet in a room is so important. And ever since he taught me that, I have really noticed. I've noticed it in myself, and I've noticed it in my friends. And it is absolutely true. We have a lot of voices that are going on inside of us, and a lot of noise that's coming outside of us. And we think without thought, and we chatter without intention. We think without thought, and we chatter without intention. But you just made a decision to clean up this corner. So now you have to discern. You have to think with thought and speak with intention. You have to discern, well, what of all those voices, that cacophony of noise that's going on inside of your head, are you going to pay attention to? Which of it are voices that you've just learned from in the past, these tapes, these old tapes that you're playing, that are not really useful to you anymore? Which are the voices that are not really what you want to do, but express the fear that you're feeling? Which are your fear-based voices? Which are the old tapes? And which is the voice, which I absolutely believe that every single one of us have, which is whispering to you the divine reason for your living? And that voice is a whisper. It's so soft that when the fear-based voices and the habit voices and the irrelevant voices all chatter away, the whisper of your divine reason for your life is quieted, and you almost don't hear it. And so therefore, discernment is kind of sorting that out. If you can imagine it like a ball of yarn that has many different colors in it. You just have to untangle it so you can see which is blue, which is green, which is purple, which is fear, which is old, which is good, which you want to keep, what you're going to do next year, not this year, too hard. Ah, there's the corner. This is the one. This is the corner she was talking about. That discernment takes practice. It takes way more than a week, but it takes a lot of practice, discernment. But here's the thing, once you tease all that out, at first it's very confusing. You don't know what I remember going through this myself. You don't know what exactly I'm talking about. You're saying, well, isn't it all the same voice? Isn't it all me? But once you start discerning those different voices, there is incredible clarity. And so when you speak in an unkind way, you're very clear as to where that came from. That's not you. That's not the light. It's an old tape. You're repeating. You ever see your children? Did you ever see your children do your stance? You know, and you're like looking at them and they say, oh my God, she looks just like you. And you say, I don't do this. And they say, you so do this. And you say, no, I don't do this. And your kid is like completely mimicking you. Well, you're mimicking your mother and father to this very day. And those of us who are a little bit older, did you ever look in the mirror right when you wake up, unadorned yet, and you see your mother or you see your father? And part of it is the genetic likeness, and part of it is the expression on your face. And that expression on your face mirrors a habit that you picked up from her, that you either embrace or you really don't need anymore. So this discernment is extremely important and powerful, and we can talk more about it because it's not easy to do, but once you do it, it's extremely freeing. And as with these spiritual principles, they're practices. You have to do it all the time for the rest of your life. It's not like you can go on a treadmill once and then you're cured of your physical ailments. You have to continually go on the treadmill. Same with these spiritual principles. Okay, somebody like to read this?
And Moses answered, what is his name? What shall I say? And God answered, tell them that Ehyeh, I am and I will be, sent me to you. And when Moses searched for the words, the name, to describe the voice of the Spirit, he discerned the truth of all true revelation, and that our understanding of it is ever evolving and becoming. Tell them, I am and I will be, God answered.
Keep going.
The voices inside our being confound. They chatter away, telling us what to do, where to go. The decision to step onto the path creates a problem. Which way do we turn? And with every voice, there are so many possibilities. And for every possibility, there are so many consequences. It can be maddening. And so we give in to the stupor of unconscious living, not knowing where to turn. We silence the voices that would guide us.
Do you remember sending a child off to college? Those of you who've had that wonderful experience. Do you remember before the first acceptance letter guy, and you were a little doubting, is he even going to go to college? And do you remember, for some of you, where he had many, many options of where to go? And how maddening that moment was. As if his entire life depended on this one decision. Who's going to be my roommate? Where's the college that I'm going to go to? What's going to happen in that place? It was so incredibly maddening. And one of the reasons why it was maddening is because the kid was 18 years old, so everything's maddening when you're 18 years old. But the other thing that was maddening about it is because the child was never so free at that moment. And you kept saying, it's going to be fine. This is the best time of your life. You're so free. All you got to do is go to school and learn, and it's so amazing. And everyone's going to like you, and you're going to fit in, and it's going to be fine. And the fear was overwhelming. Because the lesson of Passover and Shavuot, again, is that ultimate freedom, without discernment of which way to go, is very, very frightening. And if all this chatter that is going on inside of you is fear-based, you can't hear what your intuitive self is really choosing. And as each child walked onto a campus, there was that moment where intuitively, they said it was because the guy who was the person who guided them, or because they said, but intuitively there was a feeling like, I like this place. Do you remember that? When they visited school? This feels like the place. And that's the intuitive hit that we want to get to. Next paragraph, please. Somebody. Okay.
Consider the sounds and sights that surround you, the people who enter into your inner circle, the patterns that make your days. Not all that is said is useful. Not all that is learned is helpful. And not all who call us friend love us. Discernment.
Hold on. I like that line. You know, as a writer, it's the strangest thing, because you're not really writing, you're sort of, there's almost like a dictation. It's like, it's the weirdest experience. And every now and then you come up with a good line. Like most of it is nah, 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 nah. And then there's a good line. So that's a good line. So let's just pause on that for a second. Not all that is said is useful. I'm going to say that again. Not all that is said is useful. Not all that is learned is helpful. Not everything that you learned was helpful. And I'm not talking about biology. And not all who call us friend love us. In order to get better at discernment, you have to pay attention to these three things, because these are the pervasive voices that are in your life. Pay attention to your speech, and paying attention to what is learned behavior. What are you just doing because it's learned behavior? But it really isn't the way you want to be anymore. And the last one, not all who are our friends love us. And I just got to tell you that at this stage of your life, you don't need them. You really don't. It is amazing to me how much we hang around with people who don't like us very much. Kind of criticize us and don't support us and kind of aren't there for us, and they're just like, I don't know why we do this. We've got a whole posse of people who don't really love us. And our time is so precious and so limited. Wouldn't you want your minion to be people who love you? And what is the definition of a friend who loves you? The definition of a friend who loves you is that when you are at your worst, they see that you're beautiful. When you're not in the mood, when you're a little bitchy, oops, that's on the website. When you're a little out of sorts, when you're not particularly thoughtful, when you're not at your best, this person says nothing. They love you. It's okay. They have patience with humanity because they love you. And they see the beauty in you. And what's good in you completely outweighs the bad. And they know it'll pass because they know you're magnificent and attentive and caring and a loving friend back. So they'll let you go through a bad spot, even if it lasts for a while. Even if it's more than a day. You must keep your inner circle people who support you and love you. Now, if you're related to somebody who's not particularly supportive, that's a separate problem. That is a definite problem, and it is a separate problem. And it is a problem of boundaries, that you need to discern where the line is going to be drawn in the boundaries to protect yourself. Because you can't just walk away from people you're related to. But if they're your friends, you can. Even if you've been friends for 20 years, I'm telling you, you can. Because remember, discernment is trying to understand the voices that are going to guide you towards freedom. And if it's bad enough dealing with the internal chatter, to deal with the external chatter that's keeping you in a bad place and supporting you in a place that's not good, it's not worthwhile. In the vestibule of my office, I have a little picture of a little kid with a backpack, and she's at a fork in the road, and two paths, and this path says your life, and this path says no longer an option. Don't go down the path you've made a decision. Don't go down the path that's no longer an option. Next. You can go ahead, Liv.
Discernment is the practice of sorting out the words and assumptions, tendencies and habits, people and surroundings. It is a primary principle of our spiritual life.
And I'll read this to you. Like the farmer separates wheat from stalk and grain from chaff, a discerning heart examines, scrutinizes, searches, sorts, and sifts. Living well is a process. It takes refinement and practice. That which is life-draining must fall away, and all that is life-affirming is the foundation of a life well lived. So that last line is how you know. If it's life-draining, don't do it. If it's life-affirming, do it. Now, the last time I taught this, a woman in the class made a very important point. And she says, I have older parents. That's not always life-affirming. That's not easy. So this is not meant to be narcissistic. Because the truth is, if you remember the beginning of what I said, Sinai is teaching us what we're obligated to. We're not obligated to, I don't feel it, it's not feeling good to me, so I'm not going to do it. It's not feeling good to me to go visit my mother in the nursing home, so I'm not going to do it. Because it's not life-affirming. I'm tired and I'd rather go to Home Depot. Because at the end of your days, if you didn't tend to your mother in the nursing home, that would become life-draining. So I'm not talking about moment for moment, and I'm not talking about not living up to your obligations. You must live up to your obligation. So even though you're not in the mood, and she doesn't know you anymore really anyhow, or she does know you and she's not particularly nice because dementia, whatever the situation is, you go and you visit, you honor your mother and your father, and then you go to Home Depot. Right? But it's nevertheless a very important principle here. What is life-affirming, you do. What is life-draining, you don't do. And that's your sifter. That's how you discern. Irene.
This is just a quick observation. Sometimes your attitude toward the task is the life-draining portion of it.
Sometimes your attitude towards the task is a life-draining portion of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So true. So true. Sometimes it's not the task, but it is your attitude. And that's why I said there's a lot of voices going on. And it's the trying to figure it out. Absolutely. Thank you, Irene. Let's read this on the back page on page 4 together. Dove of silence, I pray. Be gracious unto me, for I am surrounded by people who wish to consume me. And then the day when I am most afraid, and I put my trust in you. When I surrender to faith, fear steps aside and I fall silent. What power do others truly have over my spirit? Peace is like a dove, gracefully soaring, silent, humble in beauty. Help understand my path, to heed the callings of my greatest intention. Good, you didn't turn the page. Let your eye fall upon the line that's important. I don't think there's enough silence in classes. person can't think. You don't think to absorb it, think. I've come to think that really need to have pauses and silences. Okay, week 3. Feel like you've been living a month already? Now you can make a choice. First you had to make a decision. And then you had to practice this discernment thing. And now you can make a choice. And this line from Exodus is so incredibly beautiful. And they camped, wherein the Israelites, right, wandering through the desert, at the edge of the wilderness. And we are always at the edge of a wilderness. Or at least we should be if we're living a spiritual life. Which either means we're just leaving a wilderness in which we've managed to come to great understanding, or we've made a decision to enter a wilderness. Either way, you're at the edge, whether it's behind you or it's before you. And what is that wilderness? A raw, beautiful, God-created, rugged landscape of which you have to make a choice onto which way to go. You have to choose which way to go. You don't go through life in this sort of unconscious way of being in the world. We are 100% of the time in spiritual principle of choice. All the time. We are making thousands of choices all the time. To speak or to keep silent. To come to class or to go to the gym. To go to this grocery store or to go to that grocery store. To act on our frustration or not to act out on our frustration. To discipline or not to discipline. To take the cookie or not to take the cookie. All the time making decisions, one after another. To space out right now, or to pay very focused and be attentive. To check your phone, or decide not to check your phone. Thousand choices. But this is a big choice, because we've already decided to clean out a little corner. Dust away a little corner. So now what do? How do we choose which way to go? Somebody like to read? Go ahead.
Choosing is as continuous as living. Alongside the instincts of breathing and blinking and the beating of the heart is a very human imperative to choose. Daily, moment by moment, life is a sequence of choices. We choose to act or not, to react or not, what we believe, how we feel boredom, passion, and kindness don't merely happen to us. They are all choices we make.
I'll reread that because some people in the front row couldn't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Choosing is as continuous as living. Alongside the instincts of breathing and blinking and the beating of the heart is the very human imperative to choose. Daily, moment by moment, life is a sequence of choices. We choose to act or not, to react or not, what we believe, how we feel, boredom, passion, and kindness don't merely happen to us, they are choices we make. For some of you, that might be a revolutionary thought. It's not like these things are happening to you. They are choices you are making. You are choosing to be bored. My mother used to say, I said, Mom, I'm bored. She used to say, what'd you say, Mom? Capi vante. I could have quoted it. Anyone know what that means?
Put your head against the wall.
Hit your head against the wall.
My mother said the same thing.
But Mom, I'm bored. Capi vante. That's what she used to say to me. Hit your head against the wall. There was like no tolerance for that thought. No tolerance at all. I'm not quite sure, you were probably quoting your mother? Probably quoting her mother, and I'm not sure whether the motivation of saying, hit your head against the wall, there's another version of it,
Another Yiddish version.
depending on whether you're from Poland or Germany, I know, as I've been told before. That's German.
Oh, yes.
Klap.
I got the German.
That's German Yiddish, and this is Polish Yiddish. So, kapi kapi mate. So, the point is, not that I really know what I'm talking about in terms of Yiddish, so delete that part. I'm sure as a young mother, now that I've been a young mother, it was partially, I'm not going to entertain you because I got to get dinner ready, okay? Or leave me alone, I got this thing to do. But as it interpreted in my child and now my adult head, it is, okay, so get on board. This is your choice to be bored. The entire universe lays before you, 6-year-old Kayrn. Grab something and do it, right? And that intolerance for this thing is happening to me, and therefore the mother rushing in to solve it is reinforcing as if this thing is happening to me, and I have no choice. It happened to me, solve my problem. But these things don't happen to you. You choose to step into them. You choose moments of sustained boredom, and you choose moments of sustained kindness and passion. You choose moments in which your life is not going so well. Stuck is a perspective, folks. Stuck is not a reality. Stuck is a perspective. If what is before you is a brick wall, you can beat your head against the wall. You can try to dig a hole and go under it. We've all dug that hole. You can try to climb over it. Or you can do this. And lo and behold, there is no wall. And the reason why we sit and stare at this wall is because we think with great determination that this is where we're, ready for the word, supposed to go. But I was supposed to go to this school. I was supposed to get this job. I was supposed to live happily ever after. I was supposed to be healthy. I was supposed to have more money. I was supposed to be more secure in my retirement. And you're looking at this wall because you were supposed to be there, and you're beating your head against it. But you have the choice to look over here. And there's no wall over here. And I don't know what was supposed to be, but apparently I made that up because that's not what is. And therefore I choose to be okay. I'm blessed, thank God. It's a choice. Somebody in the front connects paragraphs so that everyone can hear. Somebody who speaks loudly.
In the geography?
In the geography, thank you, Paul.
In the geography of the soul, choice is a powerful spiritual principle. It enables us to assert control over things within our control. It enables us to understand how to relate to and dance with things that are not in our control.
Let me pause there for a second. So many, many years ago, I had a dream, kind of a night vision. Again, I think I've told you this before, in which I could, if only I could learn to sew, I could heal my life. So when two buttons fall off my coat, it's a shopping opportunity. I don't sew. So I try to figure out, what does this mean? If only I could sew. It was so clear to me. And then I solved the riddle. And the riddle was, this is my life. Like a tapestry. Kind of a nice picture. And at this stage in my life, it's really coming together pretty nicely. Gold and blue and red, and I'm kind of seeing the picture. And there are days where I don't see the front of the tapestry, but I only see the back of the tapestry. What's on the back of tapestries? Knots and random strings, and the picture's not so clear. But whether it's clear to me today, or whether it's not clear to me today, this is my life. And I am the seamstress. I am the embroiderer. I'm the one that's making it happen by the threads that I am choosing. I'm creating the pattern. And then, black, opaque, exquisite velvet. I don't know. I don't understand. I don't see a picture. I don't know why that happened. I don't understand why there's evil in the world. I don't understand why children get sick. I don't understand why people suffer. I don't understand why that poor child was thrown away, discarded. I don't get it. This is the mystery of the universe. This is not for you to understand. Anything that we really want to know kind of resides in the black velvet. And this you can't deal with. All you can say is, what was that about? You don't understand it, and you never will understand it. Why people die young. This, you do understand. This is your business. This is your life. And the more you can put these two pieces of cloth together, sew them together, and live on the seam between what is in your control and what is not in your control, you can choose a life of goodness and faith. You relinquish control over what is not in your power, and there is so much more that is in your power that you can control.
It fosters intentional living.
So let's just go back and reread that line. The geography of the soul, in the geography of the soul, choice is a powerful spiritual principle. It enables us to assert control over things within our control, and enables us to understand how to relate to and dance with things that are not in control. Because the thing that you have to release, you still have to live with. Right? So you have to learn how to relate to it and how to dance with it, even if the powerful Oz couldn't make it better. Right? Go ahead.
And it draws a line in the sand, a boundary between what is in our control and what is not. This is an important boundary, a borderline that is drawn over and over as shifting sands blur. It is important to focus on choices we can make and learn not to lament the factors that are not in our control. Choosing is intentional living. Choosing is our ability to control and order our days. Not choosing throws us into the willy-nilly land of happenstance.
Stop for a second. Right? You resonating with that? We live at the edge of the wilderness, where we're just about to leave or just about to enter. And though the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, Moses walked a curve to redemption. So you have to have patience with yourself. This choice. So what have you done first? What's the first thing you've done? Made a decision. And what's the second thing you've done? You've practiced the art of discernment. This is going to take a while. And then, what's the third thing you're going to do? You're going to choose how you want to live. And because you're counting every day in this practice of the Omer, this is really powerful. This has got great potential to it.
Like our son says, don't sweat the small stuff.
That's what the small stuff.
Don't regret your color.
Turning the page, let's read this meditation, this prayer on choice together. Dearest God, creator of light, you set before me blessing, life, goodness. Comfort me, comfort me. Through my longing, gently urge me to find my life's purpose. Like the grasses of the field bend to the wind, I bow, humble, I choose life. Pause. Hope. Such a powerful line in the book of Exodus. And God said, I will take you out of the misery of Egypt. So whatever it is your God is, whatever it is that you believe in, this whole idea of that there is a way out, and part of that way out is a surrender to something. Because before we talked about choice and understanding what is in your control and what's out of your control. So when you get to old age, there's a book I heard on NPR, but I couldn't capture it because I was driving. I hate when that happens. A woman who is, I think, an actress in Great Britain. Did anyone hear this? Penelope.
Yes. I don't remember her name, but
If you find the book, she wrote about aging.
Right.
Actually, but she doesn't call it aging. She says, she's in her 80s. And she says, I'm writing a book on being old.
Yeah, I didn't think that sounded too old.
I actually really liked it. She said, I'm writing a book on being old because I'm a brand new demographic. There has never been this 80s and 90s demographic in human history that is this conscious, this able, this healthy. You got it already?
Penelope Lively's
Memoir.
The View from Old Age.
Thank you. Forward it to me.
Sure.
Thanks.
Lively.
Penelope Lively.
That's great. View from Old Age.
Lively. I thought it was lively. That's what I was looking for, but I couldn't find it last night. She said, I'm a brand new demographic, so I thought I should observe it and report to you what I see. Such a great, it was like, so I'm going to live this demographic and I'm going to report to you from here. Right? I really want to read the book. It sounds like a fascinating book. And she, so the point is, you can't choose how you're going to age. By the time you hit 80, God willing, right, it's cast. You might have been able to mitigate some of it when you were younger, but by the time you're 80, it's kind of cast. And so you can't choose how you're going to age, but you can choose what you're going to do about it. So this whole idea of I will take you out of your misery is the spiritual principle of hope. Because a life without hope is just intolerable. It's intolerable.
Confused. Does the hope last after 80, or are you saying, you said you can't choose how you're going to age? Or you mean physically?
Physically.
Or-
Oh, thank you. So yes, you can't choose. There are things that are in your control and things that aren't in control, right? So you got a heart thing, you got a leg thing, you got an eye thing, you got cancer. If you live long enough, you get something. That's kind of my conclusion. If you live long enough, you get something. So you can't control the something that you got. But you can live a life with hope, or you can live a life without hope. That you can control. And as you know, my mother and her friend Ginny is here. My parents live in Sedgebrook, and the Sedgebrook, and we lost a member, Herb Rindell, who also lived in Sedgebrook. Herb passed away, and his wife June is still very strong and still a member here. And their daughter was at the Shiva at Sedgebrook. And she said, Herb lived into his, how old was he, 80? 85. And Ellen was saying, as people often do, you know, he lived a good, long life. And someone in the Shiva said, honey, for us, that's young. Ellen like, right, where am I right now? And what I'm learning about aging from the Sedgebrook population is really, really spectacular. Really spectacular. The other thing I'll say is that we had this beautiful party for Purim. It was an adult-only party. And it was multi-generational. Some people of this demographic were there, and some people of your demographic were there. And the people who were the younger people, I guess 30s and 40s, probably 40s more, at first when they walked in, made the comment, I didn't know this was going to be an older person's thing, and felt uncomfortable. And it's not ageism per se, because how many of you are going to Matzah Bal Shabbat? I'm just saying. Okay, that's not a lot. All right. So we do want to hang with our people, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to hang with our people, right? And yet, we have to include in our posse people of every generation, because there's so much to learn. I mean, down and up. Everyone should have a teenager in their sphere. Everyone should have a teenager in their sphere. And everyone should have someone who, as Penelope Lively is saying, is old. And she braces it with a great way. It's not a pejorative. That everyone should have a person who's old in their sphere. You should play up and you should play down. Because you learn enormous things from the energy and disregard of youth. And for the decision to be hopeful from age. Teaches you enormous, enormous lessons. Hope is very, very important. A life without hope is intolerable. And therefore, I don't have patience for cynicism, because cynicism is the opposite of hope. They think it's funny. They think they're joking. Come on, don't you have a sense of humor? But to me, cynicism wears away at the hope. And so this says, it is possible to gaze upon the horizon and see that it is far away, distant from your touch, and in essence, an illusion, a mirage. The thin boundary between heaven and earth shifts and changes and morphs and is simply not real. And in your heart you say, how impossible to catch the beauty in the distance, and quickly turn away, eyes cast down to the smallness of now. And in this moment, you are susceptible to cynicism or indifference or both. And it is possible to gaze upon the horizon and see its vastness as abundance and possibility. That thin line between heaven and earth is a reminder that your reach can extend beyond the simple life of circumstance and happenstance. And you gaze upon the horizon, and you are inspired and enlivened and hopeful. Hope is anticipation, and anticipation is invigorating. When you gaze upon the horizon and extend your hand to touch its magnificence, your mind expands, your heart knows joy, your spirit believes in beauty, in the beauty that it sees. You believe in the human capacity for change. That's what hope is going to give you. The belief in your capacity to change. You believe in children. You believe that despite your current circumstance, things can be better. You believe with the strength of your character and with determination that you can mend what is broken. When you gaze upon the horizon and take a breath, catch your breath and realize that you can live with light and goodness. Do not look away. Practice hope. And when you do, practice gratitude. Creator of darkness and light, banish my despair, turn aside my indifference, soften the callousness of my heart. Open my eyes that I may see that beauty abounds and that love abides. Enlighten my life with holiness and grace, as it is written, come, let us walk in the light of God. Pause. Now turn the page. All right. We have 5 minutes. Okay, next week. So I'm going to end this packet here, and in the next 5 minutes, just ask you one sentence for whoever wants to say it. What hit you of this morning? What is it that, of all the things that we said, what hit you? If you want to voice it, if you want to reread a line, what hit you? Marilyn.
Very reminiscent of the Serenity Prayer that part of the 12-step program that people go through.
It's reminding you of the Serenity Prayer.
Right.
Is that good or bad?
It's good.
Okay. Paula.
Hope is anticipation, and anticipation is invigorating.
Amen. I like that line too. Lynn.
For me, it was the ability to change the focus.
The ability to change your focus, that is actually in your control. Right. Irene.
The line that it says, it enables us to understand how to relate to and dance with the things that are not in control. You didn't use the word and live with things, which means just enduring it and suffering it, but you said dance, which if you're a dancer, you know you sway and you change your movements around it. I thought that was just...
That's nice. That's one of the pleasures of writing, when somebody says something that you didn't necessarily know you meant. So I didn't say live with it or suffer through it. I said dance with it, which means to sway and to
change your movements.
change your movements with it. Nicely done. Sandy.
To me, it's the idea that one must learn to live in a life that fosters intentional living. Because in that sense, no matter how old we are, whether 6 or 600, we then give ourselves direction. And the direction isn't narrow, but rather is ever expanding. And I think that's what intentional living is.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Do not look away, practice hope, and when you do, practice.
Do not look away, practice hope, and when you do, practice gratitude. And I would say here, emphasis on the word practice. Because we all have flashes of gratitude. I mean, most of us really are not crotchety, horrible people. And the one that might be in this room, your secret is safe with me. So the idea here is practice hope, practice gratitude. Don't look away, don't flinch. Right. Sharon, hi Sharon. It's been so long.
I always seem to hear you saying, you seem to be talking to me no matter what you were saying. You were telling me I always have a choice in all of your teachings, so much so that if you become one of my voices, and do I really want to be doing this? I have a choice. I don't have to. I don't have to look at it that way. It's always my choice. I am the driver.
You're the driver. Nice. I'm sorry that I'm one of your voices. My husband had a lot to say about that.
And I want to second that, because my line was, through my longing, gently urge me to find my life's purpose. And in my generation, there's a lot of people that are looking to find what they're going to do when they grow up. And I'm one of them. I have to make a choice.
She says, if you couldn't hear up here, that in her demographic, there are a lot of people who are looking to find what they're going to do when they grow up. They're looking for their life's purpose, which for a 30-year-old, nobody would believe it, right? There is a brand new demographic that is joining the synagogue. We were just talking in the staff last night on how we need to focus on this demographic, and I call them grown-ups. And by grown-ups, I mean, they're not joining because their kids need it. They're not joining for the children. They're not joining because their kids need an education. Most of them have been members elsewhere. They're lifers. They know that synagogue affiliation is a lifetime thing. But they don't want to just go through the motions now of synagogue, and they're looking for something that sometimes they say that is more meaningful, sometimes they say that is more spiritual, sometimes they just say something different. And they wander into my realm. I just met somebody like that on Friday night, and she said, I've been looking for a year and a half, and I'm really looking, and this time I'm not in any rush, because the kids don't have to hurry up and get into Hebrew school for bar mitzvah, but she said, I'm really looking for something that is more spiritual, and I'm looking for something different. And I said to her, so why is it taking you a year and a half? Because part of the wandering is also part of the process, is my guess. And Sarah, last comment, and then we'll bring.
I like in all the meditation how you surrender to God and you ask for help from God to help you out in whatever endeavor you take. Yes. I like that.
You like the God part?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Somewhere around is our sheets of those of you who wanted to pre-order the book. I'll bring them also next week. I'm trying to get us a discount. Do you want me to collect these?
No. I want to take one.
So now you're not going to buy the book because I Xeroxed it. Although I noticed there are typos in here, so it's an unedited version.
Do you want to collect them? Should we put our
No,
names
you
on
can
them?
you can absolutely take them if you're going to lose them. Give them back to me, and I'll bring them back next week.
Hello?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.